Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, now more than ever, it's so important to celebrate what we are, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with, once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because you're listening right now. You can subscribe to the podcast. Give us that old subscribe and the like, the 5-star rating. It is all good. We need them all. But you can find us over at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, basically wherever you get your podcasts. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram, either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, I say this a lot, but it is the gospel truth. Please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, from all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, film festivals, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit, because we got so much fun stuff coming down the pipe. And speaking of things coming down the pipe, it's an important day this week. It's National Canada Film Day. This coming April 20th, and it's in its 9th year, and it's a celebration of Canadian culture. It's a celebration of Canadian cinema, where we can gather and watch great Canadian films, which, you know, have evolved so much over the years. And I mean, it's one of our mandates here in the Seats to promote Canadian cinema wherever we can, and these people just do a great job with it. It's in its 9th year. It started from our friends over at Real Canada, whose mandate really is to educate and support Canadian film on all levels. But we had the distinct pleasure of sitting down with Jack Blum and Sharon Corder. Jack is the executive director over at Real Canada, and Sharon is the artistic director. And we talked about I guess the origins of Canadian Film Day and just how that ball really started rolling, and so sort of the mandate over at Real Canada, and how really Canadian cinema has evolved in such a fascinating and amazing way over the past few years that, well, I mean, I just can't say enough about Canadian cinema and that sort of thing, because we love it and we love talking about it, and there's going to be so many great events. Either online or in person, for Canadian Film Day on April 20th. And you can check out their website at canfilmday.ca for all sorts of info on events, either virtual or near you. But first, enjoy our talk with Jack and Sharon as we dive into the rich mosaic that is Canadian cinema, because, well, I enjoyed the hell out of it, and I think you're going to too.
No, I mean, obviously, just to you both, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate you guys coming on to talk about, our national heritage, national Film Day. Like, I remember when this started, but I don't remember the flourish of it. I don't remember sort of the origin story. Like, can you guys walk me through sort of what the inspiration was on your end?
I don't. Flourish might not be the way this origin story starts.
The secret origin, it was in 2013, the prequel, where, because we were doing our Films in Schools program across the country, and we had on April 29th, I recall it was, we looked at it, and it was, we had a school event in Vancouver and a school event in PEI and a school event in Saskatoon. And so we just joked, hey, look at that, National Canadian Film Day. And then the next year, 2014, the real story, I don't know, does it matter? We had this
We're trying to tell the truth.
We had this wonderful poster that our friends at
Agency 71
designed sort of a World War I recruiting poster. It was like uniting our nation through film. And we loved it so much that I took it to a friend of mine who was running Google Canada and said, we love this image. It just sort of says so much about what we want to do. What would you do? How should we get it out there? And he said, animate it. And with that idea, we approached Cineplex and said, if we animate this, would you put it on screen for us? Would you give us some
in the pre-show
pre-show before movies? And they said, sure. What would it be? And I said, National Canadian Film Day. And they said, okay. And then I came home and said to Sharon, well, we're advertising National Canadian Film Day. And she said, what is National Canadian Film Day?
And he said, well, that's for you to figure out.
That's for you to figure out. And she did. And so that year we had 70 screenings in 2014.
And we thought
we
was
were
the
on top of the
bee's
world.
knees. 70 screenings across the country. The big time had arrived.
And then the next year was 200, and the year after that was 400. And then the sesquicentennial year came, and it was 1,800 screenings.
That's absolutely wild.
It's bonkers.
Wow. With including like 50 countries around the world.
It was
I love the organic growth of this, because I mean, it really does feel like it mirrors what Canadian cinema is, because I mean, especially in the past, I want to say maybe 20 years, it feels like the definition of what Canadian cinema truly is has changed and evolved, and audiences, it feels like audiences are finally starting to catch up to that. And I mean,
I agree.
I'm kind of curious from both your perspectives, how have you seen sort of the change in, I guess, maybe the stories that we tell? Because I mean, there was obviously, I mean, I call this sort of the beachcomber effect, where people would, you know, sort of assume it was this kind of, like a Canadian story had to be someone on the corner in Saskatoon doing XYZ, but really it's so much more, and it's so much more diverse. Where did you guys sort of start to see the change?
I would say, well, first of all, we came from the industry.
Yes.
So we were inside it, and we saw that already, even a long time ago.
Yeah.
But what we didn't see was that anybody else out there knew about it. So that was why we started this. We never meant for it to keep going. It was just a kind of a whim again. And we wanted people to know that there were lots of films. Then, as luck would have it, as we started doing that slowly, so it's been an organic thing again, in that the
voices became very diverse, and the films that were coming out of all of these different communities started to emerge and be really good. And so the buffet of offerings
just grew, kept growing.
Just grew.
So for me, there wasn't a day or a year that I went, aha, this has changed. It was just this flowing kind of thing but people started, we started to bring more people on board by going into high schools and telling kids. Filmmakers came to high schools, saw that 15-year-old kids like their movies. That's not how it's supposed to be in Canadian film.
Yeah.
Your films are only supposed to be liked by weird cinephiles, not 15-year-old boys that barely can speak. They're not supposed to think cool. So that started to change how filmmakers saw themselves a little bit.
So we tell, which we're evolving, and then sorry, I have to turn that down, go away. And then there's the story about the stories we tell. And that what we were doing was talking to young people and hearing them talk back to us to say, hey, this is great. We like this. And then we started showing films to new Canadians who loved them. Like
adult new Canadians.
Adult ESL learners loved being welcomed to the country with a story. And then with the growth of National Canadian Film Day, and it all feeds into each other, because people see that and they think, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why everyone likes this. And the whole tenor changes.
So as you know, as a Canadian, we're not very good at going good on us.
Yeah.
It embarrasses us. It's just wrong. It's just
not our nature. Yeah.
Yeah, it's distasteful. But that doesn't help movies. If you don't like movies, you don't go see them. So the idea that we have really good movies that you might enjoy, no matter what kind of a person you are. Like if you like horror movies, or you like comedies, or you like really serious art movies, or you like movies about sports, whatever you might like, we actually turned out to be making those movies. And as the industry has grown and more diverse peoples are being invited in and welcomed in, that just grows and grows. For example, the Indigenous films right now are spectacular, just spectacular. And we've been involved with the Indigenous filmmaking community for early in our beginnings. And that has been so pleasurable to watch.
The growth has been extraordinary.
Yeah, just to see what has been coming out and what there is to enjoy right now and the diversity of within that. So I don't have a good concise answer, probably to anything, but certainly to when did it change? From my point of view, it was always there. It may have been a little smaller, but it was always there.
No, I mean, this is something I've always been curious about, and I'm curious for your take on this because, I mean, obviously, given the growth of not just our homegrown business, be it from independent productions or Indigenous communities or what have you, but also sort of the boom of the streamers and the boom, just sort of the demand for content in general, and sort of the amount of productions that we have going on, not necessarily just in Ontario, but all across Canada.
All across the country.
I mean, how has the quote unquote definition of what a Canadian film is changed? Because I mean, in my mind, I could almost make an argument that something like Del Toro's, Nightmare Alley is a Canadian film, given the amount of artisans and people that worked on it.
That's a really tricky question.
And it is changing, and Del Toro is problematic for that reason.
He is very problematic
because he's so committed to making films here with Canadian film artists.
Yeah, and Cronenberg has been doing that for a long time, and Nagoyan and those people. So it's it's tricky. For our organization, we stick to the old tried and true, but I don't know if that's going to last forever. The old tried and true of who paid for it. And
what system was it produced in? I mean, this is an ongoing question. A lot of people will argue about Juno, say, which was made with tons of Canadians in Vancouver.
And a very Canadian
and a very Canadian feel, but out of the American studio system.
Or My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Which should have been a Canadian
Which
film.
felt so bloody Canadian. It's not just because we recognize the places on the Danforth. The feel of it was Canadian.
I mean, from our point of view, we're championing stuff that we feel needs championing. We don't need to celebrate Ryan Reynolds. He's doing fine.
Exactly.
I mean, if we could really help him, I think, but we're busy.
We haven't been invited.
Yeah.
But the Canadian films that are produced here that don't have that promotional muscle,
that are trying to talk about who we are as a collective,
writ large, yeah.
And I believe I'm an American, a Texan by birth. So that chauvinism I bring just inherently with me. It's not very Canadian of me. But I honestly think that it matters if we tell the stories about our neighbors and ourselves. I think it matters to see who I am and who the people across the street and my friends and my family are on the screen. I mean, I watch a lot of American stuff. I watch a lot of stuff from around the world. And I'm not going to stop doing that. But if I don't ever see the reflection of this collective, then I think we are lessened and weakened by it. And I'm not talking about being nationalistic, let's go out and, beat up America and roll over with tanks or anything. I'm just talking about feeling comfortable in our own skin and knowing who we are. And who we are is so diverse. And that makes us different from many other places in the world.
So before COVID, our kind of day-to-day education business was going into high schools, right?
Yeah.
And showing these films to young people. And Sharon used to say to them, cinema, movies, they're like our dreams. And what would it be like if you went to bed at night and you only dreamt about other people, like that?
If you dreamt of the people in the big house down the street every night.
Every night, and you didn't have your own dreams. And that's very much what we're trying to act out in real life every day, is that these are our collective dreams.
Yeah.
Well, no, and I mean, I love that, and I mean, I think it's so vital and it's so important. But I kind of want to dovetail off of that, because I will admit, I was born in Montreal, and I'm bilingual and I'm a French speaker. But living here in Ontario for 25, 26 years, with a handful of exceptions like the Denis Villeneuves or the Jean-Marc Vallée's, may he rest in peace, it's hard to find French Canadian films. And I'm kind of curious on your perspective on just sort of the bubble that Quebec is in and of itself when it comes to making film, because they're so distinct and they're so unique, and they're doing such great work. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to see so much of it outside of Quebec.
It's very hard. I mean, first of all, it's hard to see a Canadian movie anyway. That's getting a little better. So start there. Then to see a Quebec movie, yes. We actually have a partner in Quebec, Martin Bilodeau, who runs Media Films, and he is our
eyes and ears,
eyes
basically,
on the street.
brand.
And he feeds us the information, because no, we don't even hear about stuff here. Stuff that makes millions of dollars there doesn't even cross, and we're in the industry, doesn't even cross our path. So that's a challenge of this bloody country, of how do we access it? We try our best, but it's, we're not going to be able to solve that problem alone. You're right. There's a ton of great
There was
stuff.
a movie a few years back called Starbuck, Patrick Huard.
Yeah.
We just loved that movie.
We went crazy for that
and we
movie.
were stunned that it sort of opened and died here in English Canada. It was like, people would love this movie if they saw it. And then it was, of course, remade.
They made a horrible version of it in the States. Yeah.
They shoved it through the deflavorizing machine and turned an English version.
Took everything out of it that made it so. We saw that with at the TIFF screening, and we were happened to be with a bank manager and a prima ballerina, and the two of us, very different tastes. And we were all on the floor dying laughing.
That was lovely.
So yeah, it's a problem. If you can solve it, please slip us a note and we'll help.
Wish I could. I really do. Now, but I mean, something else I've got to ask is, I've got to imagine that these days, especially, I mean, not necessarily during COVID, but the boom of the streamers and the boom of technology to get stuff out there is, I don't want to say making your jobs easier, but it's maybe making your jobs a little more interesting to sort of get stuff, to have access to stuff.
So on the day, and by the way, I would like to get back to the thing about Quebec just in a minute.
Sure, please.
Before we end. On the day, we have every English broadcaster and streamer in the country. And some French. Putting Canadian films in their lineup for the day. Last year, 2.5 million people watched a Canadian movie on National Canadian Film Day. So yes, we have 1,100 screenings at this point in person. People will go to see those, but we can't get the numbers, obviously, that we can get with the broadcast streamers. So 2.5 million in this country is a lot of eyeballs.
And personally, Sharon grew up in the States. I grew up here, and the achievement of getting all the broadcasters to actually cooperate with each other.
Oh, that's huge.
On one day. I think it's the only day of the year when that actually.
I think they probably notice Christmas.
Happens.
I think everybody
they notice Christmas, but they don't work together.
That's true.
No, so that's something we're quite proud of, and it does afford us the opportunity to hit big numbers on our day, and the rest of the time it remains a challenge because everyone's access to everything is so huge. Yes, we can access Canadian stuff, and we can access the entire world.
And we even can remember our friends say, you've got to see whatever. And we sit down and say, what do we watch? What did so-and-so say to watch? I can't remember. Do you remember? What was it? Who was in it? Who directed it? Like, the array is so huge for all of us that for a Canadian film to get attention in that is very difficult. Just a little addendum to the Quebec thing. The kinds of things that we try to do, we try to promote Quebec film when we can. This year, one of the things we're doing is a Jean-Marc Vallée tribute.
Yeah.
because we've lost a great one. And so we've produced a little tribute, and we've arranged for numbers of screenings of Crazy around the country. Some are doing a double bill of Café de Flore and Crazy. And so it's not a big thing in the face of all of it, but we are trying to say, this matters. He was here. He produced some brilliant work. So that's one of our big offerings this year. So.
And I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think I remember seeing Café de Flore for the first time, and he was there doing a Q&A, and
oh, cool.
It was such a fantastic experience, and he was such a gregarious and warm guy that I really feel like he really did encapsulate what Canadian cinema is and what it could be, because I mean, he was such a fantastic storyteller. And I mean, I know for the site, we're going to be pushing people to see Café de Flore either on Netflix or to go to one of the screenings, because it's just one of those movies that, I mean, it changed my life. And I mean, and that's one of those things where film. I was so amazed that I could find a Canadian film that would change my life. And I mean, that sounds sort of didactic almost, or a little weird to say, but it's really true. And I mean, I've got to sort of dovetail to ask to you both, what maybe sort of in earlier days were the Canadian films that maybe caught you off guard and surprised you and went, wow, this is way better than it should be.
It happened for me very early. It happened for me growing up here. It happened very early. I remember, and it was interesting because I saw these things. I'm going to show my age. I saw these things in school, so it obviously influenced what we ended up going off and doing. But I started off seeing Norman McLaren, NFB shorts. In those days, there was an NFB film office in most cities, and I grew up in Hamilton. I would go down Saturday night to the NFB film office, where a very dedicated cinephile would introduce us to stuff. I saw Nobody Waved Goodbye, made a big impression. Wedding in White made a big impression on me. They really affected me.
Wedding in White's a tough one to see as a kid.
I loved that, but it was precisely because it was unfiltered and unsugary and just sort of, this is what stuff is like. And I just thought it was a revelation.
I came here after university from the States, and I saw my first introduction to Canadian film was CBC, showing stuff, I guess, late at night. I don't even remember when. It was, and I was just blown away by everything I saw. I think I saw some of the Gordon Pinsent stuff. I saw, I can't even remember what all I saw, but I went, oh my God. Now I don't feel this way anymore, but coming as an American, I went, their movies tell the truth. And now I understand it's still filtered, but at the time I just felt gobsmacked. We don't talk about him anymore, but the Quebecois film that was such a big thing, the classic in the winter.
Claude Jutra, Mon Oncle Antoine.
Mon Oncle Antoine.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah. So just
and I have to mention Duddy Kravitz.
Seeing all those classics on CBC, I was really, really taken with them all. So again, for me, the whole thing has been gradual, and then soon after that, started seeing Adam McGoyan movies, and they're like, what? And David Cronenberg movies, what's this? And so all of that, and then there are just so many, and the Quebecois movies. Like, I'm a huge fan of what the numbers of Quebecois filmmakers have made over the years.
No, I'm curious. Do you guys get to have feedback from filmmakers? Because I mean, obviously there are the Denny's and the Davids who have sort of risen above and sort of made names for themselves outside of the country. But what kind of feedback do you get from sort of maybe the more independent or the smaller filmmakers who?
We work with many of them. Yeah. We like
when we're able to bring them into schools and put them in front of kids, it's revelatory for them. Like because of the difficulties in conquering the marketplace here, artists don't get to have that dialogue with their audience. So we give them that opportunity to have a dialogue with your audience. So
and also on National Canadian Film Day, like we have worked with many of the filmmakers. And this year we're working with Indigenous filmmakers. We're doing a panel on Wednesday night here in town. And this is just one of many things that's going on. But with Danny Scolay and Tracy Deer, who are just at the top of their game and who have just made 2 gorgeous films.
Yeah.
And dominating the awards.
So we're in dialogue with the filmmakers across the country all the time. We are here to serve the filmmakers. That's one of our major priorities. When we bring new staff on, we say that this organization is built on respect for the films, built on respect ultimately for the filmmakers, for our audience, and for the people we work with. And that's just the bottom line principle of how we do things here. If we have a filmmaker, they are bloody Hollywood movie star. We do not treat them like they have nothing better to do with their time. We're very grateful that they're here, and we treat them well because they deserve it through the work that they've produced.
Of course, it's Canada, so we have to have some bitterness and rancor as well.
Of course.
We try to keep it. We try to keep it.
That's for later in the evening.
Exactly.
That's not early in the morning that we do that.
But I mean, you know what? I mean, this is why I love this day, and this is why I love your organization, because I mean, it's lifting up so many diverse voices, and it's really showing the strength that we have in our country in storytellers and filmmakers. And I mean, there was the old running joke back in the 80s and even in the 90s where, all the talented people went to Hollywood. I mean, they can still go to Hollywood, but they're not saying they're not Canadian anymore. And I think that's such a beautiful thing.
True. Yeah.
And even Jean-Marc Vallée went to Hollywood, but he kept coming home.
Yeah.
Because there's some
stuff you can do here that you can't do there.
There's a lot of stuff you can do here that you can't do there. And
I hope Denis comes back again and does something here.
Yes.
His big stuff is great, but I'd love to see him do another smaller film.
Me too. And I think he will. I'm sure he's going to get that itch at some point for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, just to put a bow on this, if you had to talk to someone who enjoys films but doesn't necessarily understand sort of the importance of uplifting not just Canadian film, but Canadian storytellers and Canadian voices, how would you sell this day that we've got coming up? How would you sell that to them?
Well, that is who we're always looking for. And when we talk to ad agencies and stuff, they go, who's your demographic? And we go, everybody. And they go, no, you can't talk to everybody. Are you talking to cinephiles? Are you talking to hipsters? And we're going, no, we're talking to everybody. We're talking to people in the Legion halls. We're talking to
small town libraries.
We're talking to the hipsters. We're talking to
film festivals.
So yes, how do we sell it? We just say there's something here for you. Whatever.
First of all, it's a party.
Yeah.
It actually is a celebration.
It's not broccoli, it's candy.
It's an opportunity.
It is the movies, after all. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's an opportunity to have fun being Canadian. And those don't come around that often. Like there's the Olympics every few years. And other than that,
and we try to make sure that people understand. We come to our website and it has literally hundreds and hundreds of choices for you.
If you can stand to sit through a movie, there's something here you'll like.
Yeah. We promise you there's a movie you're going to really like. And we curated it. So we're helping guide you to say, these are things we recommend. So, because we have no obligations. We're not Telefilm. We don't have to say every single thing that we put money into is great.
Yeah.
We didn't put any money into any of these. We're just people who love movies and we want to share them with you.
Well, as one person who loves movies to two other people who love movies, keep doing the good work. And I mean, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was
lovely chatting with you.
Yeah, likewise.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.